It's officially time to start these conversations, folks. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. Look, unless this is quite literally your very first video ever about the Boston Red Sox, like you just decided this morning that you were going to root for this Red Sox team, you knew that these conversations were going to be pretty much headlines for this Red Sox team the entirety of this offseason, right? I mean, we've been talking about the idea of Jarren Duran getting traded from the Boston Red Sox for what? Years now at this point, right? Last offseason was a big storyline. I mean, dating back to 2023, I think we had a video on this channel talking about the idea of trading Jarren Duran. Now with the emergence of Roman Anthony and what he looked like at the Major League level this season, those conversations are only going to get louder, and we haven't even gotten to the actual period here of trading ability. Right? The Red Sox can't even trade anybody, and already we've got national and local reporters saying, yeah, there's a pretty good chance the Red Sox trade Jarren Duran. Later last week, Jim Bowden and The Athletic put out their list of the top 10 players that could be traded this offseason, and in there, Jarren Duran came in at number 4 with this quote right here: "Regardless, Duran's name keeps coming up in trade rumors, and it now sounds like the Red Sox will move on from him this winter." This is a bit different than what we were hearing last offseason, right? What we were hearing last offseason was mostly like, hey, it kind of makes sense for the Red Sox to move one of these guys, right? Roman Anthony could be coming up, and, potentially it's going to create a little bit of a logjam out there. This offseason, it sounds more like, yeah, the Red Sox are already making their intent known that Jarren Duran will be available on the open market. Locally, Chris Cotillo did his prediction for the Red Sox outfield this season, or really, I think it was just Red Sox bats in general. In this, he predicted that Jarren Duran will also be on the move in a trade for pitching specifically, although I will say he left his more in the air than Bowden did, saying Rafaela is going to be a name that teams look into, saying that the only certainty in the Red Sox outfield right now is Roman Anthony. But I mean, let's be honest here, right? We're going to see Jarren Duran's name plastered all over storylines this entire winter. Red Sox fans, whether you like the guy, whether you don't like the guy, whether you want him on this team, whether or not, need to be prepared for that to happen. It's just simply the reality of the situation. So I figured now, right before free agency opens up or trading opens up, would be a great time to really dive into what are the pros and cons to the Red Sox trading Jarren Duran. The conversations surrounding the trade of Jarren Duran are incredibly interesting. It feels like Red Sox fans are either on one side. They're either wildly overvaluing Jarren Duran and what he means to not only this team, but on the open market. And then there are people who are wildly undervaluing Jarren Duran and what he means to the team and what he's worth on the open market. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But when we're talking about the pros of whether or not to trade this guy, I think you got to start talking about the fact that a lot of the pros don't really have anything to do with Duran at all, and actually have more to do with the situation for the Red Sox and what he could bring back in return, because in reality, he's a pretty valuable piece for a trade. Right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been a legitimately high-value player for the last 2 seasons. You're talking about a guy who's under control for the next 3 years. You're talking about a player who could very easily be a bottom-of-the-order bat for a legitimate competitive team here, right? And maybe potentially a top-of-the-order bat, depending on how your lineup is structured here. That is a valuable target. There's not going to be too many people on the open market this offseason that have the same profile that Jarren Duran does. The reality of it is that the Red Sox are probably not going to be able to go out there and sign for everybody that they need. There's a very good likelihood here that the best pitchers, specifically, talk about pitchers, or maybe even some of the best bats, we don't know what bats are going to be available this offseason via the trade market, not being able to be acquired by cash, but by talent, right? And unfortunately, unlike a lot of Red Sox fans hope, you can't exactly rob teams blind anymore. You're going to have to give something significant to get something significant, and Jarren Duran is a significant piece that could end up landing you something really, really impactful in another area of the team, right? So it'd be sort of this conversation of Jarren Duran's extremely valuable, but can you turn that value into a value somewhere else on this roster that makes more sense for where the Red Sox are currently at? Because we've talked about this 1,000 times, right? There's a logjam in this outfield right now. You already have 4 legitimate major league outfielders. You've got Christian Campbell, who could potentially be in there, Jacinson Garcia if you don't move on from him. Now all of a sudden you got potentially 5-6 dudes who are going to be fighting for outfield spots. The other thing that this would do, again, sort of not anything to do with Duran, but the circumstances surrounding it, is you would be able to definitively say that this is the future of the Red Sox outfield, right? Because a lot of stuff is in the air right now. You move on from Duran, all of a sudden you've got Roman Anthony, who's locked up for what, the next 8 seasons potentially, right? You've got Ceddanne Rafaela, who's locked up for, I think it's like the next 6 or 7 on his contract, and then you got Wilyer Abreu, who's locked up for the next at least 4 years on his deal. And all of a sudden you've got yourself a secure 3-man outfield for the next minimum 4 seasons available. And so you sit there and you say, okay, right, like let's talk about the circumstances and not the player itself. But even if we take a look at the player himself, it may make some sense to move him. And honestly, I don't really know if this is really a pro to moving Jarren Duran or a con. I think it's just sort of a circumstance that's going on right now. And that's the fact that Duran may just simply be the odd man out. I mean, you go back to those 3 players again, right? Anthony is an elite bat, only looking to get better. Ceddanne Rafaela had the best center field defense, arguably in baseball this year, and showed flashes of being able to put it together at the plate. Wilyer is on track to walk away with his 2nd Gold Glove in a row, and he showed this season that he can hit for real power, which is something the Red Sox desperately need next year when healthy. All of these guys are younger. Wilyer's the elder here with 27 years old. Duran may have been a 5-WAR player last year, and obviously that's incredibly important, but so was Ceddanne Rafaela. Wilyer Abreu was at 3.2 B-WAR in 40 less games here. If he had played those 40 games out, he's probably right there around that mark as well. Roman Anthony had 3.1 B-WAR in just 71 games, right? You could be talking about that looking like 6, 7, 8 WAR over the course of an entire full season. All of them are younger. All of them have more team control too. Even if you are the biggest Jarren Duran fan in the entire world, you have to understand that between his value on the market, his age, the time left he has under control, and the other guys out there right now, it's not insane to say that he makes the most sense to move. I mean, you look at this and you say, how do the Red Sox replace Jarren Duran's ability to impact this team? Well, Roman Anthony can probably provide more extra base hits than Jarren Duran had this season, right? Over a full season if he's healthy. Wilyer Abreu is going to be able to provide better defense and more power than Jarren Duran gave you this season. Ceddanne Rafaela is going to be able to replace that speed, right? You have the parts and the equations to replace Jarren Duran on the Boston Red Sox. All of this combined, does that make him the odd man out? On the other hand, while you sit there and say, is Duran the odd man out? The answer could also be no, right? As much as we just spend, 5 minutes talking about how Roman Anthony and Wilyer Abreu and Ceddanne Rafaela could all 3 of them be at least as productive as Jarren Duran was in 2025, potentially more productive than he has been over his last year in the future, Jarren Duran has actually done it. Right, there's a difference between what the potential looks like and what the sort of floor/middle ground looks like for Jarren Duran. Because I think what we saw this year was hopefully Jarren Duran's middle ground. Right, if that's what you're going to get on average from Duran, you've got a really productive player here. But more importantly, and I think the biggest con that you would take from losing Jarren Duran this offseason or trading him away, he's not really losing him because you're getting something in return regardless. In my opinion, the biggest con here is what you'd be losing off the field, right? We talk all the time about how this is a young team, how this is a team that needs direction, that needs somebody pointing them in one singular direction as a unit, right? And Duran has become one of those guys. There's a reason why when Roman Anthony got promoted to Major League Baseball and when he was officially slated to stay in Major League Baseball, his locker wasn't moved in between, let's say, Garrett Whitlock and Greg Weiser, right? It was moved in between Jarren Duran and Alex Bregman. It's because over his last, 5 years in Major League Baseball, Jarren Duran has quite literally been to hell and back. He's understood what it's like to fail here. He's understood what it's like to succeed here. And specifically in a market in Boston, that's incredibly important to have a guy in your clubhouse that you can lean on like that. Again, when we're talking about, guys like Wilyer, guys like Ceddanne, guys like Roman Anthony, who are supposed to take the helm of this team at some point in the future, is incredibly beneficial. And then you take a look at what he means to this fan base. Right, and I get it. The Red Sox, they don't sit there and make decisions as to, which guys the Red Sox fans like a lot. I mean, Bobby Dahlbeck would still be here, right? I mean, a lot of guys were still fans of Bobby Dahlbeck even when he was sucking. But there is something to be said about the fact that Duran kind of embodies right now a baseball player that Red Sox fans really latch onto. Not only does he play the game in this gritty sort of nose to the grindstone type mentality here, but he's also a player who stayed 3 hours after games this season just simply to sign and talk to these Red Sox fans. And that's why he's become such a fan favorite here. Right, and you're going to be losing that going forward. Obviously, there are going to be guys who take over the fan favorite spot. I mean, Roman Anthony, I would say most people already have him as your number one player. I think Garrett Crochet has become not only a leader, but a legitimate fan favorite amongst the Red Sox fans. But there's something to be said about having this homegrown guy who's failed, who's succeeded, who's been at the lowest points in his life in a Red Sox uniform, who's been at the highest points in his life in a Red Sox uniform, right? It's this perspective that you're going to be losing with Jarren Duran. Again, you're going to be able to make up the extra base hits. You just simply are, right? Maybe Roman Anthony doesn't hit 13 triples and lead the American League next year, but he's probably going to have more doubles, more home runs, more RBIs, probably a higher average than what Jarren Duran provided you this year. Probably going to be able to make up home runs, right? I think Wilyer will be able to in tenfold and combine that with Roman Anthony and potentially even say Don Rafael, you're going to get more home runs from all these guys than Jarren Duran. Right, you're going to be getting better defense. You're going to be getting similar speed from some of these guys, but you are going to be missing out on this sort of, intangible assets that Jarren Duran brings to the Boston Red Sox. So you sit there and you say, okay, is it worth trading away a player that's not only impactful on the field, but impactful in the clubhouse to get what you want? Look, I think at the end of the day, the Red Sox, this is the season where they have to move somebody in this outfield. Even if you are looking to dump Masataka Yoshida, which I have to imagine the Red Sox are, at the bare minimum, attempting to do this offseason, opening up that DH spot where you could sit there and you could say, well, now you could just cycle in those outfielders, right? You're still missing that bat. You're still missing that ability to go out there and add some thump to this lineup. And by opening up that DH spot, you're allowing yourself the opportunity to bring in somebody who's going to be able to do that. And then you're just creating that logjam. Again, on top of that, the Red Sox need starting pitching, right? And as I mentioned earlier in this video, some of, if not the best starting pitchers available this offseason are going to be at the cost of talent and not money. And at some point here, the Red Sox understand that they're going to have to give up some major league talent and they're going to have to make a decision. That doesn't mean it's going to be Jarren Duran. I think Chris Cotillo makes a great point, right? There are going to be teams who say, we're in a little bit of a rebuild phase. 3 years of Jarren Duran doesn't make a ton of sense to us, but 6 years of, say, Don Rafael or 4 years of Wilyer Abreu, now that's something we can make work. So it doesn't mean it's just Jarren Duran, but I do think right now, looking at the sort of structure of the outfield, looking at the potential of this team heading into 2026 and beyond, even if you're the biggest Jarren Duran fan in the world, it doesn't make a ton of sense to sit there and say there's absolutely no way Jarren Duran makes sense to trade, because every single factor here you look at, you say, yeah, he could potentially bring you something really impactful in return. He could potentially turn that talent that he has into a talent on the mound or a talent in the infield or something that balances out this team quite a bit. And you're not losing a ton of production by trading this guy. And to me, that's the biggest factors here. Right? It's not just simply that you can trade him and get something good for him. It's that you could trade him, maintain your level of play in the outfield, potentially even get a little bit better in the outfield and still improve this team. And so, yeah, I do think Jarren Duran is a prime candidate to be traded this offseason. I do think that Jarren Duran might, and if we're putting a legitimate percentage on it, I think there's a higher percentage that he's not here in 26 than he is here in 26. Doesn't mean it's the right or wrong thing to do, but if we're just looking at it objectively, it makes sense for the Red Sox to move this guy right now. Just my opinion, though. And I understand there are a lot of people who love Jarren Duran and want Jarren Duran to stay, so give me your arguments for, did I miss something in the cons of trading Jarren Duran? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.